So, first of all, for you guys who haven't, been following Georgia politics for quite a few years, specifically 2020, it hasn't gotten any better, obviously. So there's a name, Brad Raffensperger, whatever, has become one of the most controversial Republican officials, Rhino, in our country over the last several years. Luckily, this guy did not win the primary or whatever it was that we voted for here a few weeks ago, or last week rather, or today. No, this week. It was this week. But ever since 2020 election, Raffensperger has faced criticism from many conservatives who believe Georgia's election system lacks transparency or proper safeguards. At the same time, he has defended Georgia's election procedures repeatedly, saying the state follows law and maintains secure elections. All I got to say is I remember 2020 when in Fulton County they had a water burst of some sort, or uh, I don't know. It just all looks suspicious, looks fishy, and whether or not it was legit, that's why people say what they say. I'm not either there nor here, but the battle is heating up again. This new legal action centers around claims from Georgia Republicans that the election transparency standards are not being properly followed ahead of the state's primary election. He did lose the other day. The lawsuit reportedly seeks an emergency restraining order, which is basically a request for immediate court action before the election process continues. And whether you see emergency legal filings right before an election, that usually tells you the tension is extremely high. But let's talk about why this matters, not just in Georgia, but every state. Georgia has become one of the most important political battleground states in the entire country. Think about it. Right now, presidential races, the last two at least, Senate races, governor races, congressional races. Georgia's becoming a hub for that. Everything in Georgia now gets national attention because the state has become incredibly competitive politically. That means election disputes in Georgia don't stay local anymore. Everyone hears about it. They become national political stories almost instantaneous or fast, quick. And this lawsuit's happening during a time when election transparency and voter confidence remain a major issue across the country. Some Republicans argue that stricter oversight is necessary to restore trust in our elections. But meanwhile, Democrats and election officials often argue that repeated legal challenges can undermine public confidence if there's no evidence or widespread wrongdoing. That's why these court battles become so politically explosive. Another important detail here is the timing. According to the report, Republicans they didn't just file this lawsuit. There was also a congressional letter, even a call from federal intervention tied to the situation. I could see that. Remember, Rattenberger was the one who recorded Trump asking for more votes a few years ago? That tells you this isn't being treated like a minor disagreement. This is being escalated at multiple levels of government. And when federal involvement starts getting mentioned in state elections disputes, the political temperature rises, especially in a swing state like here in Georgia. But let's talk about the position or possible political impact of Raffensperger himself, because this could matter a lot for his future. Like I said, he already um, lost the race for governor just the other day. Thank God. But that independence also made him a target from parts of Republican base, and I think that's the reason why he got booted. Not booted because he was I don't know what position he held, but had something to do with the elections. And Georgia's political landscape shifting constantly, controversies like this can absolutely affect the future elections and Republican primary dynamics. There's also already an intense competition inside of Georgia's party. We are going for a runoff here, actually, for the next governor. At least is there a runoff? I don't. You know what? I gotta check. I know it's a runoff for the Senate seat. So even major election controversies becomes another test of political influence inside the GOP. Here's the bigger issue out of all of this, and it's a very important one. It's public trust, right? At the end of the day, election systems only work if voters trust the process. There's a lot of doubt on both sides, really. And if you think about it, who was it that a few years ago, yeah, said there were problems with the election here and nobody? Yeah, Stacey Abrams. Right. I remember that. That's true whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or somewhere in between. Or don't even vote. Trust is gone, and this has been going on for years. This lawsuit shows that concerns over transparency are still a massive political issue, even years after the 2020 election. Supporters of the legal challenge say stronger oversight is necessary to guarantee confidence in the results. Critics argue that these repeated disputes can create a more distrust and more confusion among voters. And that debate probably isn't going away anytime soon. Personally, I think John Thune over there, Senate Majority Leader, should hurry up, stop goofing off, pass the bill to make it, force people to have ID to vote. It's my opinion on that one. One thing we need to be careful about here is separating political claims from verified facts. Again, all that gets fixed with passing the bill that the president requested, which at the end of the day is forcing everybody to have an ID to vote. At this stage, these are legal allegations and political arguments playing out in court and obviously for us in the public. The restraining order request itself does not automatically prove wrongdoing occurred. The courts will ultimately decide how much merit these claims have. But politically, the damage and headlines are already happening. They happen. And in modern politics, perception can sometimes become as important as actual legal outcome. Isn't that the truth? Why do you think there's so much bashing and shaming? The situation also highlights how election administration has become one of the most intense political battlefields in America. Secretaries of state used to be relatively low-profile government positions. That's his position. Now, they're front-page national figures, and Georgia's one of the clearest examples of that shift. And say the other thing that you thought. Every election dispute in the state now becomes part of a larger national conversation about voting laws, election security, transparency, and political trust. So where does this go from here? That pretty much depends on a few things. How the courts respond, whether additional evidence is presented, how voters react politically, and whether federal officials decide to get more involved. But one thing is clear in this one. Georgia is once again center of America's election debate. About that, man. I moved down to Georgia. I never thought we were going to be the center of anything. I actually came down here trying to get away from all the attention. And this story probably isn't ending anytime soon, but I want to hear what you guys have to say. Leave in the comment section below. Hit the like if you like it. Hit the dislike if you didn't. But either way, subscribe. Talk to you later.